For more than 1,000 years, Egyptian art did not change. Not because Egypt lacked imagination, not because its artists were incapable of invention, but because Egyptian culture believed the universe depended on things staying the same. Order was sacred, repetition was protection, stillness was holiness. And then, suddenly, it stopped. In the mid-14th century BCE, a pharaoh did something no Egyptian ruler before him had dared to do. He rejected the system entirely. He was born Amenhotep IV, a name that meant Amun is satisfied, invoking the chief god of Thebes and the powerful priesthood that served him. But he would later erase that god from his own identity. He renamed himself Akhenaten, effective for Aten. The name change was not symbolic, it was a declaration. And for a single generation, Egypt broke with its past. Akhenaten abandoned most of Egypt's ancient gods in favor of one, Aten, identified with the visible disk of the sun. Not a god in human form, not an animal-headed deity, not a statue that could be clothed, fed, or carried in procession. Aten was shown only as a blazing sun disk, its rays ending in small hands that reached down toward the royal family, offering life directly. A god requiring no inner sanctuary, only light. Akhenaten declared Aten the only universal god, and he declared himself Aten's son and sole prophet. This was not reform, this was a rupture. In hymns composed during his reign, Aten is praised not as Egypt's god, but as the creator of all lands and all peoples, a universal power whose light touches the entire world without distinction. In modern terms, this was the earliest known attempt at monotheism, the worship of a single universal God enforced at the level of the state. But it was not monotheism as later traditions would define it. Aten offered no moral law, no covenant or sacred promise, no personal relationship to ordinary people. The God was universal but distant, and access to him flowed through a single figure, the king. The consequences were immediate and explosive. For centuries, Egypt's priesthoods, especially those devoted to Amun, had controlled temple land, ritual authority, and economic power. Akhenaten stripped them of all three. Temples were closed, gods' names were erased, images were defaced. Ritual systems that had governed Egypt for generations were dismantled, and the art changed with it. Art historians call the sudden break the Amarna style, named after the short-lived capital city where it emerged. The Amarna style is not an evolution of Egyptian art, it's a deliberate reaction against it. The rigid frontality of earlier sculpture gives way to curving, fluid forms. Bodies soften, hips widen, bellies swell. Necks stretch into elongated serpentine arcs. The king himself is shown in a way that would have been unthinkable before. Heavy-lidded eyes, full lips, narrow shoulders, and a skull elongated into an almost unsettling shape. Its ideology made visible. Many statues of Akhenaten emphasize an intentional collapse of traditional gender distinctions. As the sole intermediary of Aten, the king is shown absorbing all creative power, masculine and feminine, into a single sufficient body. For the first time in Egyptian art, we see intimacy at the center of royal imagery. Akhenaten is shown kissing his children. Princesses climb into his lap. The royal family gathers beneath Aten's rays in moments of tenderness that had never before appeared in Egyptian state art. This was utterly new. Earlier pharaohs were timeless, remote, sealed from emotion. Akhenaten presents himself as physically present and emotionally visible. This intimacy gives doctrine a human form. Life flows downward, God to king, king to world. The universe narrows. At the center of this new visual language stands Nefertiti, Akhenaten's wife and chief partner in this religious transformation. Her name means the beautiful one has come. Her famous painted limestone bust, discovered unfinished in a sculptor's workshop at Amarna, captures that presence with remarkable clarity. The long neck curves with precision. The face is alert, balanced, self-possessed. One eye was never inlaid, not through neglect, but because this was a working model, not a cult statue. This is not timeless perfection, it is living presence. Nearby, in that same workshop, were other images that push even further. Portraits of royal women show age openly, lined faces, heavy eyelids, sagging flesh. One figure, often identified as Akhenaten's mother, appears carved from dark yew wood, an exceptionally rare material, possibly chosen to match her complexion. Old age is not concealed, it's acknowledged. For a culture that had long equated youth, balance, and ideal form with cosmic order, this was unprecedented. It was a change in meaning. Akhenaten did not merely change religion and art, he changed geography. He abandoned the traditional capital at Thebes, long the religious heart of Amun worship, and founded an entirely new city in the desert, Akhenaten, the horizon of the Aten. Akhenaten marked the city's boundaries with stone inscriptions carved directly into surrounding cliffs, declaring that Aten himself had chosen the site and that no future king had the right to alter it. The city was built quickly. Its temples were open to the sky. Unlike traditional Egyptian sanctuaries, Aten's temples had no roofs. Nothing was permitted to stand between the god's light and the world below. It was a city designed for a single god and for a single reign. Akhenaten ruled for approximately 17 years. He likely died in his mid-30s. How he died is unknown. His body has never been securely identified. But one thing is certain, the experiment did not outlive him. After his death, the system collapsed with remarkable speed. Aten was abandoned. The old gods returned. Temples reopened. Priesthoods were restored. Akhenaten's memory was attacked. His name was erased. His statues were smashed. His city was abandoned to the desert. To later Egyptians, Akhenaten was not remembered as a reformer. He was remembered as a criminal king, a ruler who broke Ma'at and had to be removed from history. They did not argue with him, they erased him, as if silence itself were punishment. The Amarna Revolution did not fail because it was too strange. It failed because it asked Egypt to abandon the very system that had kept the universe in balance. Egyptian art was never about self-expression, it was about survival. For over 1,000 years, repetition had protected the world. Akhenaten replaced repetition with revelation. The revelation proved fragile. When the experiment ended, Egypt returned to stillness. But it returned changed. Because once something breaks, it's never entirely forgotten. The boy who would succeed him, Tutankhamun, was his son, and he would inherit a kingdom desperate to undo what his father had begun. In the next episode, we meet that boy king, a ruler who reigned briefly, built little, and yet became the most famous pharaoh who ever lived. Not because of what he did, but because his tomb was sealed. And because Egypt, once again, prepared for eternity.